Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back if you're new here. My name is Bella and I love all things design and DIY. It is mid-March and I'm getting so unbelievably excited for spring. The ground here is still completely covered in snow, but I think there's a good chance of that melting this week. So my DIY brain is going absolutely nuts, thinking of all the projects that I want to work on in the next coming weeks and months. So today I'm going to go over 10 DIYs that I think you should try out with me this spring. The very first project that I am so excited to try out coming up is these really adorable beeswax egg candles. I think these are so cute. Can you possibly think of anything more charming? Nothing to me screams springtime more than these. They look relatively simple as well. If you've looked into candle making at all or are a complete beginner candle maker, to me it's something that I've never really gotten into because it's always seemed quite complicated. But this just looks like a super easy, beginner friendly, kind of messy, natural way to do it, and those are the kinds of projects that I absolutely love. I hate feeling like things need to be perfect, so I love how like rustic, for lack of a better word, these look. I think if you had an Easter brunch or something like that, these would be so adorable as a table setting. Everyone could have their own little individual beeswax candles and then they could take them home afterwards. So cute. We have a farm not too far from us that has colored eggs, so they have mixed boxes of like creams, browns, and turquoise, actually almost the color of my walls. So I might need to make a trip down there one of these days to get some really pretty eggs to make these candles with. Imagine that teal color, like robin's egg blue, against beeswax. You could even dye the beeswax too. Honestly, your options here are kind of endless. You can also just use the shell as a form to make your candle. So you can peel it off afterwards and then you're just left with a really cute egg-shaped candle, or you could leave them on as the little vessel for the wax to go into. I think either way is just adorable. Speaking of eggs, Easter is coming up very soon, and this is one project that every year I think I'm gonna do, and then I just don't see a point in it almost, and it just slips my mind and I forget about it. But that is making natural dyes for eggs. I think this is because I don't have any children in my life, so I don't really dye eggs, even though I think it's still a fun thing to do at any age. But if you do have kids, this would be a really fun project. Once you start looking into natural dyes, the options are so endless. There's so many things that you probably have outside, or if it's still winter weather where you are like it is for me, tons of things that you probably already have in your cupboard. I've experimented with different natural dyes in the past on fabric and it is so fun to test out. One of my favorite dyes, surprisingly, was black beans, which create this beautiful like mauve lavender color, which you wouldn't expect looking at them for them to create something so beautiful, but the color is amazing. Of course, we're coming into the season of beautiful florals outside. If you live somewhere where things are already blooming, I'm very jealous of you. Here in southern Ontario, that is just absolutely not the case, so there's no chance of me getting out and foraging for any flowers anytime soon, but there are so many things that you can do with just grocery store flowers to make them look amazing. I actually want to do a video on that coming soon, how to make your grocery store flowers look completely professional. But this is just the perfect time of year to bring all of that beautiful floral spring goodness inside, especially if you live somewhere where that's not happening outside yet. You need a little bit of life inside to get you through this last little bit of winter. I can't think of anything that screams spring more than this next tip, especially for me growing up in our house. This is something that my mom always did, still does, and is just the most quintessential spring thing to me ever. And that is forcing blooms. So there are certain plants that if you cut branches off and bring them inside into the warmer weather when they're still in dormancy outside. So when they're not doing anything yet, they're not budding, you can bring them in when they're budding, but again, if you live somewhere where it's still completely blah winter outside, then this is the perfect time of year to do that. So things like forsythia, we have a purple sand cherry in the front of our house. I think I've done this with maybe peach blossoms or apple blossoms before. There's only certain things that this works for, so I'll put a list here of sort of species to look for. But forsythia I think has to be my favorite one. So what you do when you bring them inside, you just put them in water, and the warmth from inside is basically mimicking springtime outside. So it kind of speeds up that rate that things come out of dormancy, and in no time your bare branches will go to completely full of blossoms, and you can use these for your spring arrangements. I'm going to completely shift gears from floral design and talk about cooking a little bit. This is something that I've definitely been slacking on in the past, I would say, year, honestly. I started to get into baking bread last year, maybe the year before that, sometime in the quarantine black hole, and I found a recipe that I absolutely loved. It was the easiest beginner bread recipe, and it was so good. So I'll link that down below. It's a no-knead rosemary bread. You make it in a Dutch oven. It's so simple. You basically make the dough and let it sit in the Dutch oven one day, leave it overnight, and then the next day you pop it in the oven. I think the extra time that you let it sit for makes up for the fact that you don't have to knead it. I really don't know. I don't know a lot about bread, but all I know is that this recipe is so easy. If you've never made bread before and it sounds intimidating, try this recipe out. Especially if you love rosemary, you can swap in any herb, any amount of herbs, anything you want, edible flowers, whatever seasonings you like. You can really make it anything, but trust me, if bread is intimidating to you, you need to make this. It is so good. And if you don't have a Dutch oven, I would recommend keeping your eye out at thrift stores, because I do see them there quite often. I still think buying one new is a pretty good investment, because places like HomeSense and like PC makes them here in Canada. There's different brands that do them in an affordable price range, and they last forever, so I think the investment is still worth it. But you can also find some really nice ones at thrift stores that are in perfect condition, and you're going to end up paying a lot less for them. Keeping in this sort of kitchen theme, I would recommend that you make some cloth napkins. If you've never done this before, it is such a game changer, especially if you love hosting and just spending time in the kitchen and sort of romanticizing all of that. Switch to cloth napkins. You will never want to go back. There's a few different ways that you can do this that I would recommend, at least, or that I can think of. With any route you take, you're just going to start with a fabric that you love. I would recommend cotton or linen, not just because I prefer natural fibers, but just because they're going to actually serve a better function in terms of being a napkin and being absorbent and doing their job, basically. Certain polyesters and synthetics just aren't like porous, so they're not actually going to do a good job of like wiping things up and getting things clean. So start with your fabric and cut that into the size that you personally want. You can base this off of napkin sizes, or you can just do whatever divides perfectly into the piece of fabric that you have, or if you're basing it off of a way that you like to fold your napkins, whatever you want to do, cut it into as many pieces as you can or as you want. And then I would say you kind of have three options. You could go the most effort route and actually fold all of the edges over twice and sew that down so that it has a nice clean edge. Or you could just sew a border of a straight stitch all the way around and let the fabric just naturally fray in the wash, and then basically it's only going to be able to fray to that stitch line. Or, and this is what we do, is pinking shears. So I talk about these a lot on my channel. These are, even if you don't sew, actually especially if you don't sew, this is one DIY tool that you absolutely need, because basically what they are is zigzag bladed scissors. So you can see they're just like regular scissors, but they have this zigzag sort of edge on them. And basically what this does is, since it cuts the fabric into these triangles on the edge. It stops the fibers from fraying any farther than the bottom of these triangles. So these are really great as a sewing tool. I finished the inside of a lot of my garments with these. If you don't sew at all, these are an amazing tool to have because it gives you a clean line without having to hem something, basically. So even if you were cutting off like a pair of pants or a top that you wanted to make just a bit shorter and were worried about the fabric fraying but didn't mind the raw edge, try these out. Trust me, you're gonna love them. They don't necessarily work on everything. Like I would say a chiffon or something like that that's just prone to fraying a lot. Probably they won't do as much as they would for like a cotton or a linen, but still give them a try. You can pick them up for like $5-10. Trust me, if you DIY a lot of things, you will use these a lot. The next DIY that I would recommend for spring is freshening up your pillowcases. This is such an easy beginner project to do if you're starting out sewing, or if you even don't have a sewing machine and want to really put your hand to something. You can use these as a way to practice your hand stitching. I love taking vintage cotton sheets and upcycling them into beautiful, crisp pillowcases. I did this for my mom for one of her Christmas gifts this year, and I think it's just something that somebody can always appreciate. I used a really beautiful, crisp, old white sheet, and then I took a trim that my grandma had given me. It was a beautiful lace trim, and I just set that in on the front edge of each pillowcase. And it actually ended up being a trim that my mom had used on a dress that she made for herself when she was younger, so that was a really adorable coincidence. But whether these are for you and your own bed, or if you want to give them as a gift to someone, I think everybody always appreciates a new set of pillowcases. So even if it's just for you, that's one of my biggest tips for a little spring bedding refresh. Speaking of your bed, I have been obsessed with quilting recently. I have behind me a quilting rack that I've implemented into my studio because my quilting ideas are just off the rails lately. But one thing that I have been really wanting to try, and I just haven't done it yet because I haven't been able to decide on a color, honestly, but that is this gingham quilt. I think this is such a great project because you can do this without any quilting knowledge at all, really. Basically what you want to do when you look at a pattern or a quilt, it doesn't even have to be quilted, if you see any geometric pattern, so you can look at any gingham. I am very gingham obsessed, so it's like everywhere I look. Even just behind the camera, I have 2 gingham prints sitting right there. So take a look at a gingham print and start to notice the shapes within that. So if you divide this print into squares, for example, that's going to be your quilting blocks, if that makes sense. A really great way to try to start seeing patterns in quilting blocks is to get a pad of graph paper and actually start drawing out patterns. So if you want to attempt something like a gingham quilt, get your graph paper and just sketch out a few quick rows of the gingham pattern and divide it into whatever blocks make sense to you. And so then you want to start constructing each block individually and then sew the blocks together, just so that you can keep track of all of the pieces and keep everything lined up nicely. If that sounds at all complicated, trust me, it's not. Just start drawing it out and I think it'll make sense. Obviously, the smaller that you go with your squares to make up the gingham print, the longer it's going to take you to construct because you're sewing more seams. So if you really want a quick, easy beginner way to do this, make your squares bigger and you're going to spend less time sewing. But you can make this as intricate as you want, or you could make it a huge oversized gingham print. I think any way you do this would be adorable. Okay, we're shifting outside. This is one of my favorite, maybe my favorite out of this whole list. Bug hotels. I've been looking at these for quite a while and wanting to make them, so I think this will finally be the spring that I actually do this. They're basically just these little vessels. You can make them as small or as big as you want. I've seen people do them just in a tin can hanging, or people make these huge structures with different sizes of holes and rooms in them, but they're basically just little habitats for wildlife that you make. So people cut up dead plant matter and different things from the outdoors and kind of stuff them into whatever vessels they have so that they make different sorts of shapes and different sizes of openings for bugs to live in. A little bonus alongside this sort of genre, I also really want to attempt making some birdhouses, and even more so than that, I want to make some bat houses this year because I just love bats. I think they're so cute and I really want to attract more of them into the garden. There's a lot of things that are pollinated by bats. I think a lot of people don't know that bats are really beneficial pollinators, and they also eat a lot of insects, so they're a really good predator to have in the garden to kind of balance out the ecosystem and get rid of some of those pests that are kind of overpopulated or throwing things off or killing the food that I'm growing and competing with other beneficial insects. My favorite time to be out in the garden in the summer is right at dusk. It's the perfect time of day to be weeding and watering. Nothing's too hot. Everything just kind of gets to breathe. And then the bats come out and start doing their dives above the garden, and it's just one of my favorite things to watch. So looking forward to more bats this year. Number 10 on this list is probably the thing taking up the most amount of space in my brain right now, and that is to sow some seeds. Even if you don't have a garden or you're not really the biggest outdoors person, I think anybody can find some sort of a connection to plants. So whether you love to cook and want to grow some herbs for your kitchen, or want to bring more biodiversity to your area, so you want to put out some wildflower pots for beneficial pollinators, maybe you're interested in medicinal herbs, so you want to grow your own apothecary, or you just want to start growing more healthy food for your family, so you want some microgreens. Whatever it is, I think that anybody can relate to plants and growing something. I think it's the most satisfying hobby that you could possibly have, and its benefits are just absolutely endless. So that's a whole other topic, and I plan to do a ton of gardening content this year coming up, so stay tuned for that if you want to learn more about gardening, if you're a total beginner or just want to find a kindred spirit to hang out and talk about gardening with. This is the perfect time of year to be starting that journey, even if you're starting completely from scratch. I'm gonna have a lot of especially beginner friendly content coming up. I'm going to be trying all sorts of new things. That's the amazing thing about gardening, is you can never ever stop learning. So come along with me and learn if you want, and I hope in a lot of these upcoming videos I'm going to be trying out some of the DIYs that we talked about today that have been on my to-do list forever. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you some inspiration for things that you can do coming up to just give you all the spring feels. If you enjoyed it, you can give it a like down below and subscribe for more content just like this, and I'll see you back here next time.